At 1-800-Flowers.com, we know that connections are at the heart of being human. Whether celebrating life's joys or comforting during tough times, 1-800-Flowers helps you express what words can't. For nearly 50 years, millions have trusted 1-800-Flowers to deliver thoughtful gifts that help create lasting bonds. Because it's more than just a gift. It's your way of showing you care. Visit 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast and connect today. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast.
Hey everyone, this is your host, Peter Zablocki, and you're listening to the History Shorts podcast. I hope everyone's having a great day so far, and thank you so much for making this show a small part of that. If you'd like to help me out with a small gesture, please leave History Shorts a rating or a review, and click that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. For sources and books used as the basis for these episodes, how to advertise on a show, and other information such as a list of our upcoming guests on the Conversation series, or a link to our Patreon account where you can listen to exclusive episodes not heard here, please visit www.historyshortspodcast.com. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate podcast listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the globe, all in one place. Download Podcast Republic now and take your podcast experience to the next level. Having said all of that, some of you may remember learning about the infamous Checkers speech when the then Vice President Richard Nixon gave a televised address on which hinged his entire future political career. And the speech was about, well, a dog. Of course, there's more to that tale than just that. So here is the rest of that story.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Richard Nixon, a rising figure in American politics during the early 1950s, had established a reputation as a fiercely ambitious, disciplined, and often polarizing politician. Born in California in 1913, Nixon's early career through law, military service, and California state politics demonstrated a combination of resilience and strategic calculation. By 1950, he had secured a seat in the United States Senate, where his staunch anti-communist stance during the height of the Second Red Scare propelled him to national prominence. This reputation, however, was a double-edged sword. While Nixon's dodged pursuit of alleged communist sympathizers earned him accolades among conservatives, it also attracted significant criticism, particularly from moderates and Democrats weary of his aggressive tactics. By 1952, Nixon's political trajectory brought him into the national stage as the vice presidential nominee for the Republican Party, running alongside Dwight D. Eisenhower, a popular five-star general and the embodiment of post-war American optimism. The campaign, however, soon encountered turbulence that threatened to derail Nixon's ascent. On September 23, 1952, the New York Post and other media outlets reported allegations that Nixon had accepted a personal fund, essentially a private slush fund, established by wealthy supporters to cover campaign and personal expenses. Although Nixon had not violated any laws, the optics were potentially disastrous. His opponents quickly seized upon the accusations, framing him as ethically compromised and untrustworthy, a potentially fatal stigma for a politician whose public persona emphasized integrity and moral rectitude. The Nixon campaign faced a dilemma: ignoring the allegations and risk public perception, or confront them directly, with the attendant risk of amplifying the scrutiny. It was in this context that Nixon delivered what would become one of the most famous speeches in American political history. On September 23, 1952, he appeared live on national television, a medium that was still in its early stages of political use. he appeared to address the fund allegations directly. The address, later immortalized as the Checkers speech, exemplified a dramatic confluence of rhetoric, personal narrative, and emotional appeal. Nixon began by acknowledging the seriousness of the allegations, presenting meticulous documentation of the contributions to the fund, emphasizing transparency and asserting that no gifts or benefits had been misused. The calculated structure of the speech reflected Nixon's very careful preparation, intended to counter accusations with a combination of rational defense and personal storytelling. Yet the speech's enduring impact derived less from this legal explanation than from Nixon's strategic emotional appeal. In a segment that would later define the address, he mentioned a Cocker Spaniel named Checkers, a gift received by his family, declaring that regardless of any criticism, the family would not return the dog. This anecdote, simple and humanizing, served multiple rhetorical purposes. It shifted attention from abstract political accusations to a relatable domestic imagery, evoked empathy, and framed Nixon as an ordinary family man confronting extraordinary scrutiny, and a dog-loving person. In doing so, he tapped into the emotional sensibilities of a post-war American electorate, which increasingly consumed political messaging through the emergent medium of television. The speech, approximately 30 minutes in length, combined elements of moral defense, factual clarification, and this personal narrative about a dog. Nixon recounted his upbringing in very modest circumstances, the financial constraints faced by his family, and the integrity with which he claimed to have conducted himself in his political career. He framed the slush fund not as a corruptive force, but as an expression of gratitude by private citizens who recognized the burdens of political life. Moreover, Nixon positioned himself within a broader narrative of public service and personal sacrifice, appealing not merely to Republican partisans, but to the national audience as a whole. The rhetorical strategy exemplified an early recognition that television could magnify not only political communication, but more importantly, the emotional resonance, a recognition that would profoundly shape subsequent campaigns in American history. So the immediate impact of this speech that would be remembered essentially because of a conversation about a dog was very striking. Public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Letters, telegrams, and telephone calls to the Republican National Committee poured in, many expressing support and defending Nixon's integrity and his right to keep the gift of the dog. Reportedly, the emotional connection established through the personal anecdote of Checkers resonated particularly with women and middle-class voters, demographics increasingly influential in electoral politics. Eisenhower, whose campaign had been threatened by the controversy, publicly affirmed his support for Nixon following the address, effectively neutralizing a potential crisis that might have ended the vice presidential campaign. In the weeks and months that followed the speech, Nixon's political career not only survived, but arguably benefited from the demonstration of media savvy and emotional intelligence under pressure. From a historical perspective, the Checkers speech represented a pivotal moment in American political communication. It highlighted the growing importance of television as a medium capable of shaping public perception and personalizing political narratives. Nixon's use of television prefigured later developments in campaign strategy, including the cultivation of a direct relationship between candidates and voters through the mass media. At the same time, the speech reveals the delicate interplay between scandal, public trust, and rhetorical framing. Nixon's careful calibration of factual defense and the emotive storytelling allowed him to transform a potential catastrophe into opportunity, securing his place on the Republican ticket and eventually in the national political imagination. Nixon's reliance on the emotional appeal, particularly the sentimental reference to checkers, had been interpreted by some scholars as manipulative, an early example of blurring authenticity and performance in televised politics. Nevertheless, contemporaneous accounts suggest that this speech did more than merely entertain or deflect scrutiny. It actually engaged the electorate in a participatory evaluation of character, appealing to shared cultural values such as family, hard work, and the tension between public service and personal cost. Now, the Checkers speech, probably most importantly, reflects the complexities of scandal management in a democratic society. Nixon's response illustrates the calculated balance between admission, explanation, and emotional engagement required to navigate allegations without conceding moral authority. It was kind of like saying, yeah, maybe I got some money from these donors. Maybe there was a hush fund. But I also got a dog, and no matter what, I'm not going to give this dog away. My family loves Checkers, and he is now part of our family. While the controversy surrounding the slush fund might have ended lesser careers, Nixon's ability to humanize himself through this event, employ the emerging power of television, and engage the electorate's empathy transformed the episode into a defining moment in his political trajectory. Thanks for listening.